Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another episode of the Six Star Business Podcast. Hey, Av, how are you?
Hello, Pete. I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Hey, guess what? Guess what?
What?
We've hit double digits. This is episode 10.
10. Yay! I feel like we need a party. Could you imagine if when we get to a triple digits? That's going to be exciting too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. And we'll get there sooner than we would have when we started, because the word on the street is that we're going to 2 episodes per week.
We are.
Da, 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 da.
For those of you who just can't get enough and you just love listening to these amazing conversations, we're going up to 2 a week very, very soon.
Yeah, we're not quite sure yet whether we're brave or stupid.
Yes,
but we can't get enough of the conversations that we're having, and we want to accelerate the process of getting the word out there about everything to do with Six Star Business. So we're really excited. Also really excited to introduce the guests on this episode. So who are they, Av?
We have Mike Irving and Steve Barlow.
Now, this amazing men, and the conversation was quite a while ago.
Yes.
And dear listener, we have a confession to make. It was so long ago that the intricacies and the details of the conversation have been swept up into everything else that's been going on, all the other conversations we've had. And as with most things, we're finding our feet. We are at episode 10, which is great, but we've found little enhancements to our process, and we now record an outro at the end of recording every episode, which helps us record the intro. But there are some things we remember from the conversation which we want to tell you about. What stood out for you, Av?
Right. So it was, I do remember being really engaged in this conversation, because I remember Steve talking about a number of concepts and being an intellectual, an academic. He brought in some really interesting knowledge around teams and individuals and work teams and groups. And that was, I remember just feeling into that and being really grateful that he shared all of that. And then Mike is different in that he is more, because of what he does for in his life and how he serves the world, he teaches things and it's more practical application. So communication, one-on-one, even one-to-many, how to actually relate. And I remember him bringing up this concept of force, and that whenever we get someone to do something, we want someone to do something, it should never be by force. And the moment that you feel like you're pushing, they will feel that you're pushing, and therefore it won't work in the most effective way. So I remember that being a big highlight for me. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. For me, when just before we hit record, the thing that came to mind was that concept of force and how subtle it can be. Force is quite a strong word, but when we think about the interaction and the transactions of communication that happen between individuals, force can be exerted at a very subtle level. But we, as humans, we have incredible radars for this thing, and just hearing how Steve and Mike kind of discussed and unpacked that is hugely relevant for the desire to build a six-star business. So plenty of gold in this here episode, and after you listen to it, we'll see you on the other side. So enjoy.
Let's go.
You want me to pretend you're witty?
I'm doing my best. So, listen, welcome to another episode of the 6-Star Business Podcast. Really excited as we start recording this one because we're recording our 8th episode. But earlier on today, Brisbane time, we actually launched the 6-Star Business Podcast to the world. So we're live, we're out there, and we raced past the 100 downloads mark very, very soon after launch. So we're really happy. And when I say we, I mean me, Pete Daly-Dixon, one of the co-hosts of this podcast, what you are listening to right now, and my co-host, Evelyn Clark.
Thank you, Pete. Yes, I'm Evelyn Clark. Lovely to be here. I'm very excited. Episode number 8. How did we get here so quickly? It's flown.
Time flies when you are having fun.
Yes, exactly.
How are you?
I am very well, thank you. It is evening here in Australia. Pete, what time is it there for you?
Just after 8 o'clock in the morning. Yep.
Nice. That's a reasonable time to be up and about.
Lovely spring day. The sun's shining, and
go
out for a walk later on. Yeah, we're joined as ever by a couple of guests. Av, do you want to set the scene and introduce them?
Yes. So we have 2 fantastic people on this podcast. I'm not sure if they've actually met each other, and this is one of the joys of this 4-person style podcast. Our first is Steve Barlow, and second is Mike Irving. So I'm just going to ask you, Steve, if you want to go first, just introduce yourself and tell us where you're located, who you help in the world, and then tell us a little bit of something personal about you to set the scene for our listeners and viewers.
Okay, well, it's nice to be here, and I thank you very much for the invitation to share this time with you. I'm Steve Barlow, and I live on the Gold Coast in Queensland, southern Queensland in Australia. I've lived here for a year. Prior to that, I was on the north coast of New South Wales for 11 years, and prior to that, I was in Sydney. And I run a business called the Change Gym. And the name gives you a bit of an idea of what this is about. So it's about change, both personal change and organizational change. And the gym part of it is about performance. It's about getting better at things. It's about becoming more fit. It's becoming more capable of achieving the things that people want to achieve in their lives. So put that together, and I help individuals and I help businesses and organizations to become better at what they do, to perform better, and to become more flexible in how they work and how they think and how they operate, so that they can change more effectively and achieve their business outcomes or their personal outcomes in a better way. So I work with businesses of different sizes, from large government organizations and private organizations down to small individuals working on their own. So that's basically what I do. I'm interested in all sorts of things, mostly of a kind of an intellectual bent, I suppose. I'm interested in philosophy and history and science and things like that. And I also, another sort of cap that I wear is that I lecture. I do a bit of lecturing at the University of Tasmania in this field of change and change fitness and change readiness to people in their 3rd year of a master's program in leadership. So that's something that I do on the side, but the two kind of flow together. So that's a bit about me.
Great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mike.
G'day, guys. How are we going?
Hey, Mike. Good.
Really well. Better for being in your company this morning.
Oh, mate, thank you. You're too kind. So my name is Mike Irving. I live in wonderful Western Australia. I'm just south of the CBD of Perth. I have a business called Advanced Business Abilities, and fundamentally we support business owners and sales professionals with mental clarity and gaining the ability to go out and get what they want, create what they want. I suppose a little bit about me. I've got a lot of experience building and training sales teams and recruiting salespeople. I spent 10 years teaching people how to go door-to-door and business-to-business on commission only. I have 3 passions in life. One of them is my wife. She is absolutely fantastic. The other is riding dirt bikes off-road. And the third is boating, which is something my wife and I have only recently got into. So that if you're on the waters, I'd love to catch up with you in an anchorage somewhere close to Perth.
That's brilliant.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mike.
Great to have you both with us. And it's interesting that there's the serendipity aspect of the 6 Star Business Podcast has started to kick in from episode 8 onwards. And that is that we just send people a link to book on to an available episode. I mean, out of interest, Mike and Steve, had you met each other before? Have you been in the same place?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do know each other. But that's not always going to be the case. It also make for some interesting connections and conversations. And what we like to do at the start of these is that just to kind of bring everyone together into the same space that we're creating here is just to kind of tap into what's brought you here. And both of you, Steve and Mike, will have heard about the 6 Star Business probably from Av or myself. You've maybe listened to some of the previous episodes that have gone out there. So I'm just really curious to find out as we kind of get to the top of the roller coaster on the start before the conversation takes us for the next ride for the next 40 minutes is what grabbed your attention about the sort of concept, if you like, of the 6 Star Business, and I guess ultimately held your interest long enough about that concept to want to spend an hour with Av and me to chew the fat and have a conversation about it. Mike, after you've kind of I don't want to say wipe the smile off your face, but there is a connection with you to that question. So maybe you can start with that and also answer it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's an excellent question. Yeah, we talked a fair bit about that question, and for me, that question really is your number one question you want to ask anytime you are in either a sales situation, or it's a great question to get conversation started. I can give a couple of answers to that question. The first and simplest answer is you asked me to, and I'm really happy to support and be involved in the conversation. The topic of a 6 Star Business is, what does it really take to have your business stick out, not just from a marketing perspective, but from a delivery perspective, from the point of view of your customers really getting exactly what they want. And, starting with that question is really apt, because that's one of the things that will ensure that you're working towards the outcome that your client wants. Make sure you know what it is. So I hope that makes sense to both of you and also to the audience listening.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, what about you?
Well, I guess likewise, I was invited to attend, and I was happy to help out in that regard. I come from a background of helping people change, and we're all, I guess, well, I don't suppose everybody is, but most people that I hang around with are interested in becoming the best that they can be, doing the best that they can do with the opportunities that come their way. And that means that people have to change. We have to grow. We have to learn. We have to get better at doing things. And I work in this field of change fitness and change readiness and change management. And so I'm always willing to share, wanting to share with people what these insights are and how they can help bring some clarity, some understanding about how we change and how we improve and how we grow. And so I saw this as an opportunity to share some ideas with people.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Mike. I really love that. And I just want to tap into what you just said in terms of sharing ideas about the change. So that implies that in order for us to be the best, there's a change element. which I would agree with. I think we all, as humans, we are inherently imperfect, perfectly imperfect. And there's always room to improve. And in a business sense, there's definitely always room to improve. What is it that you have found in all of your experience working with individuals and businesses that they need to focus on in terms of that change?
Well, from my perspective, on an individual level, I work with a concept called change fitness. And change fitness is really an umbrella term that involves a whole lot of different aspects to it. But the average person has only got an average amount of change fitness, which means that there are some changes that they can do okay, but there are some changes that they will struggle with, because change is like, it demands things of us. And in order to be successful at it, we have to be able to supply the kind of things that it demands. Now, I'm really talking about psychological demands here, and behavioural demands, but the psychological demands underpin the behavioural demands. So, when we want to try and become the best that we can be and build the best kind of businesses that we can build, we have to push ourselves into our zones of discomfort, away from where we've been in the past, which is what we're familiar with. That's kind of our current state. But if we want to become better, we have to leave our current state behind and move somewhere else. And that means that we're going to get into uncomfortable situations. And none of us like to be in uncomfortable situations. Change pushes us out there. And we have to put our hands up for that and be prepared to take that. So change fitness becomes something that we need more of. And the more change fitness that we've got, the more we can delve into areas that are uncomfortable for us, but the more we've got the ability to sustain doing those things until they become familiar. And then we're at a stage where we probably need to move on again. But that's how we grow.
Mike, I know you work in the area of changes as well, personal and organizational. Does this concept of change fitness resonate with you?
Yeah, look, the thing that I'm 100% aligned with there is that we're comfortable inside of our comfort zone. And we've all seen the memes on social media, where does the magic happen? Well, it happens outside your comfort zone. The thing that I look at that I find really fascinating is what are the walls of our comfort zone made of? And to me, if we can know what that is, then we can do something about shifting where those walls sit. So if we're really comfortable inside this comfort zone, and then when you step outside that comfort zone, you're in that learning zone. The walls of your comfort zone are made up of the things that you're unwilling to experience. And so Steve and I haven't spoken about this at all prior. So I'm going to assume that there'll be parts of what I say that he'll agree with. He probably might have different terms, but the comfort zones and those walls, when we shift our willingness to experience something, then we're actually adjusting our filter of what we're going to be willing and able to do in life. So change fitness, the way that I would approach that is from the point of view of you're dealing with resistance, you're dealing with emotional experiences when we are unwilling to experience something. That to me is the ultimate thing that is to change in order to get real change in our lives and in our behaviors. So Steve, is that in alignment with fundamentally the way you go about this, or what? I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are lots of different aspects to it, and that's one of them. But I think that we go through life, and when we're very young, we're not born with any change fitness really. We don't cope with any change when we're young, when we're very small, when we're babies. We haven't learned how to do that. We're very dependent. And then we start growing up, and oftentimes we're given a lot of freedom, and we try things out, and we fall over as we attempt to learn to walk, and we make mistakes, and we don't get punished for it. But then eventually we go to school, and all of a sudden the walls start coming in around us, and there are rules, and there are things that we're marked on, and we've got to get the answers right. And there are consequences for not getting the answers right. So we learn that we can't take too many chances, that there are rules to this game of life, and we have to play by the rules if we want to succeed. And then we go through our school years, and we end up in a job where, again, there are more rules. And we've got a job description, and we're allowed to do some things and we're not allowed to do others. And throughout this process of socialization, oftentimes we learn to play it safe. We learn not to take risks, that taking risks can be a dangerous thing, where we might fail and we might lose out and get the answers wrong. So we learn to play it safe. But change is inherently risky. Change, we've got no guarantee if it's going to work out or not. So a lot of people are not happy about change. They feel uncomfortable because they're aware of the riskiness of it. And it's a difficult thing when we haven't really learnt how to handle change and how to do it right. We're not really taught that. We're not taught to develop change fitness. And so a lot of people just don't learn how to do it. Now, some people do because of their environment, what they learn, the people that they mix with, or just from their own experience, they've learned and they've figured some things out. What I do is help people figure it out in the shortcut way, because I've done a lot of research in this, so I've figured out what the parameters of change fitness are, and certainly what Mike's saying is certainly in the right direction, but there's details and sort of levels of it.
So what's on the other side of that? Let's say someone improves their change fitness and they explore the boundaries of their current zone of comfort. What's on the other side of that, particularly in the context of attempting to create a 6-star business? Is the first bit a what's the word? Is it so
mandatory precursor?
Yes. Yeah. Precursor, that's the word I was thinking of for the former. Mike?
Just ask me your question one more time. I didn't capture the whole thing.
Yeah. Probably because I was just garbling my words, which I tend to do on this podcast.
That's okay, mate.
It's a good job I have who kind of reads my brain to some extent. So the question was, just hearing this idea about change fitness and exploring the boundaries of our current zone of comfort. Firstly, what's on the other side of that, and is that exploration a precursor and an essential nature of having a 6-star business? Sure.
So my experience is that every business is a creation of the mind of the owner. So every business is a reflection of the way that the owner's mind works, both the positives and the negatives. So if there's a condition in your life or business that isn't exactly the way you'd like it to be, if you create your own reality, then that means that the source of that condition not being the way you'd like it, the real source of the problem there is going to be something about you or the way you think. Einstein was quoted as saying, we're all just prisoners of our own mind. And I think it was also Einstein who said, you cannot solve a problem by using the same thinking that created the problem in the first place. So for me, if you are running a business right now and you want to expand your business, you want your business to grow or change in some way, shape, or form, the starting point for that is you. It's looking at how you think. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your assumptions? What are your blind spots? What are your attitudinal limitations or liabilities? because everybody will have those to some degree. And inspecting and confronting those involves a willingness to do so, and a willingness to be ready to change. So if you don't have that, then it's not going to be much use.
Thanks, Mike. Do you think someone needs to have a picture or a vision of the other side before they go through the change, that internal thing? And maybe Steve can answer this as well in terms of change fitness. So if we're going to go out to that uncomfortable zone to change, to grow, do we need to see the carrot to get there? Do we need to see something else?
My first and short answer is no, because that can be something that can be explored and developed as you go. And if you have that and you know what you would like it to be already, well, great, that's a bonus. But is it essential? No. That can be explored and developed as you go with that person. Steve, your thoughts?
I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to behaviours. I mean, success or, is the product of what you do. But underlying the behaviours are how you think, because if you don't think in the right way, you're not going to do the right things. And it's not just about the content of your thinking. So the content is important. Having that vision that Aveline is talking about is an important aspect. I agree with Mike. You mightn't necessarily have it at the start, but you're going to have to develop it. It's going to be an important part, because if you don't know where you're going, you're not likely to get where you need to go. You need to have a vision of that. But sitting behind that and beneath that is you need to have the capacity to have the vision. The way you think, not just what you think, but how you think matters. And change fitness is really about developing the capacity to think in the right way, or think in ways that allow you to do things like create a vision. And some people struggle with it because they don't have the underlying capacity. Their change fitness is low in certain areas. And so they struggle to get that, the content of the vision or other things.
It's really fascinating. At kind of at some level, I feel like we're kind of peeling back an onion. And something you said there, Steve, makes me think maybe we're getting to the core of it. That again, just coming back to the context of a 6-star business and what that means is what is the thinking that so if a business at the moment is not currently a 6-star business, from what Mike said, is that's the fault. You didn't say it like this, but that's basically the fault of the owner of the business. And then Steve, what you said is that's probably a function of the way that business owner is thinking. So how does a business owner need to think? What needs to change? And obviously you both have businesses around this, so I know there's not going to be like a silver bullet or something that we can share in the next 5 or 10 minutes that's going to magically help business owners transform their businesses to 6-star. But can you give our listeners kind of that initial sort of breadcrumbs, if you like, to follow on the trail? What needs to change? How do they need to think to have a 6-star business?
Well, I'll have a go.
Go for it.
It comes down to behaviours. We've got to behave in certain ways. We've got to follow through with certain activities, and there are critical activities that matter more than others. There's critical behaviours that matter most. So we need to identify what those critical behaviours are and be prepared to do them. But we also need to have our thinking sorted out. So the behaviours are going to come out naturally if we think in the right way. If we don't think in the right way, those behaviours are never going to be natural and they're not going to be sustainable. We might be able to do them for a little bit of time, but we're never going to be able to do them long term. So we have to be working on ourselves. And this is not something that we do, one day. It's something we have to do every day. And change fitness has got 7 main components to it. And I can tell you what they are, but it's a whole process of developing these things. But one of them is motivation. I mean, we need to have the motivation to push through. When we reach that barrier, that wall that Mike was talking about, the wall of our comfort zone, where we start to move beyond what we're comfortable with, and we start to move into those areas where we don't really want to be there. It's hard. And it may not be so hard in itself, but it's hard to keep going. It's hard to keep doing it. And there are so many times where we feel like quitting, and it would be so easy to quit. It's that kind of motivation, that kind of grit, determination to push through. We need to develop that. We also need the vision that Aveline was talking about. We need to have a sense of where we're going, but we also need to feel optimistic about that vision, like it's within our capacity to achieve it. If we've got a vision, but we're not optimistic about it, we might think other people can achieve that, but not me. Well, having that vision is kind of like torturing yourself. There's no power in a vision that you don't believe is possible. We need to have visions that we believe in and that we can feel that we can achieve. And so that brings us to another concept of our feeling of our capability, of our capacity to be able to do things. We have to be realistic about this. We have to be realistic about what our capacities are. I guess we could. I'm probably better to say this in using 4 areas. We need to have a sense of vision and insight. Vision is a sense of where I want to be in the future. We need to be able to see where we want to go. And insight is being aware of what we've got right now. What's going on in the here and now? So we don't just want to be idealistic. We want to be realistic as well and understand. And that's a pair that kind of go together. Motivation, which is really about what do I value and what would I be prepared to go through the difficult times for? How important is it for me? Because if it's not that important, you're probably going to give up. So you need to find stuff that's important for you. And the sense of confidence that I can actually do it. So this is a view of myself, okay? The other one's a view of the situation. And then there's got to be also a view of other people. And there you've got a couple of other ideas. One's got to do with trusting other people. We need to be open to receive help from people who are trustworthy. And part of understanding the current situation is figuring out who's trustworthy and who isn't. But we also need to recognize that we can't just lean on people because they've got their own agenda as well. They're trying to do their own thing. And there needs to be a balance here. So if we want their help, well, we need to be able to help them too, or willing to help them. We live within a system. And if we don't get the balance right, then the system becomes unstable and we can't achieve things. And the fourth area is how we think, our beliefs. These are our kind of worldview beliefs, things that we buy into. And we need to get that right. So in other words, we need to think right about ourselves. We need to think right about other people. We need to think right about the situation that we're facing. And we need to think right about the kind of beliefs that we buy into. And we can change all these things. We're not trapped by these things. We can change them. And as we change them, we can do things to change them, then what we're able to do in behavioural terms changes. And that's how we get through that wall that's our comfort zone. We never actually get rid of our wall, but we can just push it out further.
Push it out.
And that's a lifetime journey of pushing it out further so that inside the limits of that wall, we can do more things.
Yeah. That's a fascinating insight. And Mike and Steve's been talking there. I've seen you've been nodding in agreement. I really want to push you both, though, to, I guess, more. I mean, more concrete examples, if you like, of the application of the kind of things that Steve was just giving us an insight into there, about in the context of a 6-star business. So maybe we could just come back a bit, I guess, and ask the question is, when you've had a 6-star experience with a business, what is it about that experience that makes it 6-star, and how can we marry what we've been talking about so far on this episode to that experience? Can you talk to that at all, Mike?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you have a 6-star experience, that's a pretty high level experience. What are the key attributes of that? Well, I haven't thought about this beforehand necessarily, but off the top of my head, one of the key attributes of that is you feel cared for and connected to. So your experience is one where, you feel like you had a problem, you wanted a solution to this problem, and the whole way through the process of your journey with ABC business, you felt connected to them. Their messaging was right just when you were looking for it. You felt cared for. You felt understood. You felt listened to and heard. You didn't feel sold to. You didn't at any point in time feel, and I'm going to specifically say this, you didn't at any point in time feel forced in any way. Would you agree with that? Now, the use of force is something that I've spent the last 15 years considering and looking at and looking into the impacts of that on relationships and connectedness and our ability to build teams and create wonderful marriages and personal relationships with people. So when you look at creating a 6-star business, I think really what you're looking for is to make sure that in every way that the experience of that business for everyone involved doesn't involve the use of force. So often selling is done through a very subtle degree of the use of force, and it leaves people feeling off. It leaves them feeling what's the word I want to use? Buyer's remorse. If they were talked into it, if they were asked enough yes questions so that they say yes at the end, they might sign up or buy or whatever the thing is, but later on they go, something just doesn't feel right about this. Well, that's not a 6-star business experience, is it? How am I doing here, Pete? Is this kind of?
It's fascinating. It's not come up at all in any of our previous conversations, and I'm interested to know what you mean by the word force, because the word force and subtle don't often go together.
No, they don't.
So what are one of the aspects of subtlety is that it's often difficult to spot in certainly in yourself. So where do you see force being applied that perhaps our listeners might be able to use that to take a look at themselves and their organization to ensure that it's not there?
It's a great question, and I wish we had 2 hours to be able to talk about this, because there's a huge amount of depth that goes into the subtlety of what I'm discussing and talking about here. And anytime you feel, if you think about the feelings that are associated with subtle force, what feelings come up for you when you think about that? And also I'll note that force has a gradient. So there can be force at a level 10 out of 10, and there can be force at a level 1 and even at a level 0.01. So the subtleties of it, I want to make sure are not lost. So if you think about feeling subtly forced to do something, what feelings are associated with that for you?
That's interesting. I guess it depends on my past experience to a degree with a similar person, business situation.
Yep.
And it could be like what we've been talking about and what Steve's been talking about could be my comfort zone level as well. And if I'm being forced to get to that edge, I could be feeling that force somewhat, and therefore I don't feel quite natural and in flow.
Yeah. For me, the use of force will, to some degree, create feelings of antagonism, anger, resentment, hostility, fear of loss, grief and guilt, and ultimately there will lead to feelings of indifference and separation, which is the opposite of a 6-star business experience, right?
Yeah.
And so anything we do that, let's give a specific example here. So sales is often taught through the use of persuasion. Is that true? Have you seen courses on
it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you really break down what is persuasion is fundamentally talking someone into it. If you're talking someone into it, then you're doing a lot of telling. And if you're doing a lot of telling, then there's a subtle way where you're attempting to force your views onto another person. Whereas when you learn how to sell through asking questions, and you don't tell, you don't persuade, you ask questions with an intention to understand, that person then is choosing. They are choosing themselves. Even in the process of supporting someone to change and adjust their comfort zones, if you attempt to force the adjustment, then you're actually just creating more resistance to the adjustment in itself. That adjustment it's necessary for the person to choose it, not to be forced or talked into it or persuaded into it. And it's not that, forcing someone into it or persuading them into it, it's not that will never work. It will have workability, but its workability will very likely be short term. The more that you can ask them questions, like one of the most common things that I see or that I experience is I'll sit and I'll ask questions of someone, and eventually we'll get to a point where all of a sudden the person goes, "Wow, I really see what you're saying here. But I've not actually said anything." They just arrive at their own conclusion, their own choice, and go, boy, look, I wasn't thinking about that in the most productive way. Boy, this is way better. But I've not told them that. I hope that gives an example. Subtle force is a really significant problem, and it's a problem where majority of organizations around the world that in one way, shape, or form manipulate people, they do it using subtle force. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's a great insight.
I've got I want to link in what you just said about the questioning and allowing someone to come to that realization, and the thanks, for telling me that or making me aware. Would those questions that you ask people naturally help them to tap into the vision and the motivation that Steve was talking about, that then gets them through their comfort zone, or at least to take that first step?
Yeah. And it's important that you do it on a gradient that works for them. And every person will be slightly different. If you attempt to get change to happen at too steep a gradient, you'll just hit huge resistance. So just at the rate of change that the person is able to do, and then if you can also speed up their ability to do it faster, well, even better. But attempting to force it to go too fast, you're going to end up with problems.
If I can just
Steve,
there are two concepts here that we can talk about. One is what I would call engagement readiness, which I think is really what Mike's talking about. Engagement readiness is more about the behaviours. Okay, if you want people to engage in something, maybe buy something or do something in your organisation, then you have to engage them. You have to help them engage, and that's not really by forcing them, by putting pressure on them. It's more by, and there are 5 key messages that researchers identified that people need to hear. And if they hear these messages, then they are more likely to want to engage. But you've got to put those messages out there, and you've got to get them to hear those messages and hear them over and over again. So that's promoting behavior, the right kind of behaviors, or the kind of behaviors that you want them to see, whether that be buying something from you or doing something, as an employee or as a partner in a business. So that's looking at it from the behavioral side, and that has to be a part of it. And then the change fitness is underneath that. Change fitness is the way that you think that supports the kind of behaviors. And you have to work on both directions, from underneath and from the top. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're left with force, which is what Mike's talking about. You pushing people into doing things, coercing them. And, as Mike said, it kind of works, but it doesn't work well. It's not really sustainable, and it's not going to lead to a 6-star business. It might lead to a 2 or 3-star business.
Mm-hmm.
But people won't really like it. But if you work from the engagement and from the change fitness, and you create an environment that nurtures change, then people will feel supported to be the best they can be, and they'll deliver the best kind of business that's possible for them to deliver.
When you, that's really interesting, Steve. When you think about your experiences of dealing with businesses over the last 3 to 6 months, what's been an example for you of a 6-star business experience? What were the attributes? What were the qualities? What's your criteria for deciding whether a business would deserve that 6th star?
Well, I mean, a business is there to serve a purpose. And I think 6-star businesses, they are very clear about who their clients are, and they're very clear about what they are trying to do to help them. What it is that they're trying to deliver, what benefit that they're trying to deliver. So, this kind of concept that the purpose of a business is to make money, I would say that's not 6-star thinking. Yes, you do need to make money in business. We're running commercial enterprises. But the question is, how am I trying to benefit society? What value am I adding to the clients that I'm trying to serve? So a 6-star business is very clear about who they're trying to serve, what problems they're trying to solve, and how they're trying to help these people. And, at the end of the day, all the behaviors work together to deliver that. The things that we've been talking about, the engagement readiness, the change fitness, they're the kind of the capital that you bring that delivers the goods. It's the actual goods themselves that people want.
I'm so glad this conversation has been recorded. It'd be pretty stupid having an episode of a podcast and not recording it. But those 3 things that you said there, Steve, right at the end, just to me, I mean, I couldn't echo them back to you, and that's why I'm looking forward to listening to this episode, because there was something in what you said. Do you know what I mean? It kind of seemed to kind of bring it all together. I've got my eye on the clock. Just with your again, it's just time's just gone. What any last words before we, in the words of the inestimable Matt Crease, bring this in for a landing?
Oh, I have so many words. I just want to pose a last question, I guess, is given everything that you've shared tonight, Mike and Steve, what's the most difficult thing, or actually I'm going to rephrase it, what is the thing that stops so many businesses from being 6 stars? If you could think of just one thing.
One thing.
What would it be?
Closed-mindedness.
Yeah, I think we'd probably be talking about a similar thing. I'm gonna talk about resistance. So if there's resistance creates closed-mindedness. It stops the person from being open, stops them from being willing to inspect and willing to experience, and therefore restricts the ability to learn and develop.
Beautiful.
So, and I've got one last question then. So bearing in mind that if we're business owners and we have a business that we recognize at some level is not at a 6 star, with what we discussed about today, there's going to be some recognition that I'm going to have to change myself in order for my organization to change. And if I employ people, I'm guessing that they will have to change as well. Is that change that can be done by someone on their own, or does it always require sort of input from outside, from the likes of you? And I'm not asking you to pitch your services, but just with your experience of working in this the sphere of helping people change in order to get their businesses to 6 star, how effective can people doing it on their own?
Well, I would say that people have the amount of change fitness that people have at the moment is the sum total of what they've gained in their life so far. So if you're 30 years old and your change fitness would sit at 50%, then that's taking you 30 years to get to 50%. And I coach people in change fitness. That's what I do. And we've seen people on average get a 40% increase in their change fitness. So, if you could go from 50% to 65% in 90 days, then that's quite an increase over, that's shortcut a process.
Yeah.
Now that increase means that you're capable of doing more. Your behaviours are going to change because your thinking is changing.
Right.
And I think it helps to do it with help.
Mike, what's your view, just to kind of
so
off?
Really simple. I think everyone can put in efforts to change. So it's not a matter of, I don't think it's a simple question of can you do it on your own. You can. It's going to take you a lot more time. I know in my experience there are certain parts that you can't do on your own because you can't see your own resistance. Your mind is automatically going to go and look everywhere else other than where the resistance is in an attempt to solve the problem. That's the nature of it.
What resistance?
Yeah. So, usually the things that we think are the source of a problem, unless the problem resolves instantly, we're actually looking at the wrong source. So it's far superior, like by a million country miles. It's better to have someone else who is objective and who you give permission to direct your attention to where the real problem is. So that's my most succinct answer to that question.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you both.
Av, do you want to land this baby?
Yep. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mike. I've just been so thoroughly enthralled by this conversation. I hope you both have loved it. I hope all our listeners and viewers have as well. And you've got notes. You're probably clicking on the links to learn more about Steve and Mike. But there's so much to be gained from this. And I think that the key takeaway for me is that A, we're our own worst enemy, and B, we are also the instrument of change ourselves. So, and we cannot do it all on our own. And that is why there is only a small percentage of businesses that are 6 star.
Wonderful. Well, again, thanks for the both of us, to the both of you. And
thanks for having me.
Av and I will be back here. We'll be back here same time same place next week with another episode. I don't know who the guests are. We'll find out when we log into the recording session. So it's good to see you guys, and see you again soon.
Very good. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Evelyn. Enjoy your day, guys. See you soon, Pete.
Bye.
Oh
boy.
Yeah. That was amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was. The one of the great things about this outro we're recording is we're recording it immediately after the conversation, so it's fresh, fresh in our minds. So much in that, even without taking notes, Mike's concept of force in a relationship or an engagement, and really interesting concept to explore, and resistance there. Yeah. What else did you get from it?
Oh, so much. Steve's intellectual insights about the nature of change, and how we change as individuals, and being ready for change readiness, the change gym concept. But he also brought in the force thing and agreed with Mike. And that was great how they talked about that in terms of people not only changing and being ready for change, but how it impacts us individually and also with our employees. So we haven't done the inner work, and if we haven't created that safe space and asked all the right questions and created the vision and the internal intrinsic motivation for somebody to do something in a certain way, then they feel forced. Then that builds the antagonistic feelings, the resistance and resentment, both within our organizations, so our staff, but also our customers.
Yeah.
So just that concept alone is huge. If you start to look at your customer processes and what you're expecting of your customers and how you speak to them, where are you creating resistance and force? And
also that kind of narrative, if you like, that went through the whole episode for me, that sort of taking personal responsibility, that if your business isn't 6-star, it's like Michael Jackson said, take a look in the mirror and make the change. It's gonna start with yourself. I'm sure that our listeners will want to check out Mike and Steve. The links are in the show notes for that. Is there anything else that they can do on the back of listening and watching this episode?
Yes. If you're interested, go to www.journeypoint.com.au/scorecard and fill in a very short quiz. It's a scorecard, bunch of questions. It won't take you more than probably 3 minutes. And it gives you a rating on your customer journey, so that the importance that you've got to focus on your customer journey. And that's a really great kind of starting point to really focusing on how you are delivering that journey in your business. It's a start. And
creating that sense of connection and care that Mike spoke to, the sort of hallmarks of a 6-star business. Yeah. So wonderful to spend time as ever with you, Av. Lovely to spend time with you, our dear listeners. And as I said earlier, we will be here same time, same place next week for another part of the conversation around what it takes to be and have a 6-star business. So until then, we'll see you later.
Thank you. Good night. Good morning. Goodbye. Ciao.